The Architecture of Value. Episode 1, The Origin of Money, a journey from 10,000 BCE to the dawn of coinage. 10,000 years ago, around 8,000 BCE, before coins or paper existed, before writing, before cities, a Neolithic village stirs at dawn. In this ancient world, roughly 8 millennia before Christ, there is no barter. Economists call it the myth of barter, the idea that early peoples negotiated chickens for pottery. Anthropologist David Graeber spent decades studying these communities. His finding? They didn't barter. They used credit. If I gave you grain today, you owed me meat tomorrow. Nothing was written down. Writing would not exist for another 5,000 years. Social memory was the first ledger. Neighbors helped neighbors. Debts were social bonds, not mathematical abstractions. The elders remembered who owed what to whom. Memory was infrastructure. Storage wasn't personal, it was communal. The village prospered or starved together. Every exchange created obligation, a future debt that strengthened social bonds. These weren't primitive peoples fumbling toward capitalism. For millennia before 3000 BCE, this was a sophisticated system, older than bronze, older than the wheel. Women ground grain each morning, labor shared freely without keeping score. A potter shaping clay by firelight owed nothing for the skill her mother taught her. When families exchanged dried fish for herb bundles at the village edge, no price was negotiated. An elder teaching a young hunter to knap flint passed knowledge forward, the oldest debt of all. A woman weaving reed baskets by stone lamp light worked not for payment, but for the community's need. The night watchman tending the communal fire. His payment was belonging. Children gathering wild berries in the forest learned early, what you find, you share. A fisherman mending his net at dawn would feed families not his own. The goatherd's flock belonged in a sense to everyone. Ownership was collective in these earliest settlements. Women drying meat over smoldering coals preserved food against the lean months, collective survival. A man carving bone ornaments by torchlight created beauty, not currency. At the village spring, filling clay water jars was common work for common survival. Beneath ancient oaks, elders debated and resolved disputes. No courts, no contracts, no money. A mother cradling her infant in the doorway of her mud hut. Security came from community, not savings. The hunter returning at dusk with game slung over a wooden pole was greeted as provider, not merchant. Crushing plant pigments in a stone basin, she created color the village would share freely. Building a mud wall over woven sticks, labor was the original commons. The evening meal around the communal cooking pit, perhaps around 7000 BCE, was both sustenance and ceremony, binding the village together. An elderly woman sorting seeds into clay bowls chose what the village would plant and eat next season. Children playing with carved wooden figures on dusty ground rehearsed the roles their community needed most. We leap forward 5,000 years to roughly 3,500 BCE to Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates. Villages have become cities. And in these cities, clay tablets recorded who owed what. Credit entries pressed into wet earth. In this cradle of civilization, during the Bronze Age, scribes made a breakthrough that would define the next 3,000 years of commerce. They pressed reeds into wet clay, creating the world's first permanent records of debt. Barley delivered, silver owed, names, dates, quantities. Around 3100 BCE, this was accounting, and remarkably, it was humanity's first writing. Temple archives held thousands of these tablets, the institutional memory of the world's first empire, a full 2 millennia before Rome. Young apprentices learned cuneiform in shaded courtyards, mastering the language of obligation. A merchant presenting a sealed clay envelope to a temple official submitted a contract, commerce formalized. Along the great canals, workers irrigated barley fields that fed the temple economy. Potters marked storage jars with seal impressions, branding before brands existed. A temple priestess overseeing grain distribution was, in effect, running a central bank. Cylinder seals rolled across wet clay left unique impressions, the world's first signatures. In the marketplace, merchants weighed silver on stone balances. Even then, trust required precision. A brewer recording barley rations on his clay tablet tracked both inventory and wages, Sumerian multitasking. Fishermen delivering their catch in reed baskets to the temple's storehouse paid their taxes in protein. Ox carts loaded with grain sacks arrived at city gates at sunset, commerce flowing toward the ziggurat. In scribal workshops, rows of men pressed styluses into clay by lamplight, mass record-keeping. Each fresh tablet with moisture gleaming on its surface was a promise made permanent. Workers stacking grain in the temple granary were building the reserves of a proto-bank. Reed boats carried copper ingots along the Euphrates. River trade demanded written records. Late into the night, around 2500 BCE, a lone scribe worked by oil lamp, the ancient world's accountant, perfecting a system that would endure for centuries. Clay tokens placed inside hollow clay balls became sealed contracts, trust in miniature. In the potter's workshop, the kiln's orange glow lit rows of drying vessels, inventory waiting to be counted and taxed. A shepherd counting his flock at a mud brick pen, while a scribe recorded the tally. Livestock met ledger. Semicircles and wedges pressed into clay, Sumerian mathematics born from commerce. A temple official inspecting grain jars in a dim warehouse was auditing the state's most vital reserves. Workers building mud brick walls with reed scaffolding erected the infrastructure of civilization. When two merchants disputed a deal, a temple scribe mediated, clay tablets served as evidence. The coppersmith working his bellows at the forge transformed raw ore into tradable ingots. A chariot maker receiving wooden poles and leather straps on credit would repay in finished vehicles, ancient futures. Seal impressions showing mythological scenes carried the authority of gods and kings. Dawn over Uruk around 3000 BCE, the great ziggurat silhouetted against pale sky. A city of perhaps 40,000 souls built on recorded debt. Now we travel far from Mesopotamia, across continents and across millennia, to pre-colonial West Africa. Long before European ships appeared on the Guinea coast, the Tiv people of what is now Nigeria organized value into spheres that no coin could cross. While Europe was still using Roman-era currency systems, the Tiv had developed something different entirely. They organized exchange into three distinct spheres. First, subsistence goods, yams, grain, chickens. A woman sorting yams into baskets in a compound courtyard managed the currency of daily life. An elder displaying polished brass rods at a compound meeting revealed a higher sphere of wealth, prestige goods. Cowrie shells measured carefully on woven raffia mats served as units of everyday value. Women pounding grain in large wooden mortars performed the labor that kept the first sphere turning. The exchange of bride cloth during ceremonies belonged to the second sphere, prestige goods that yams could never buy. A blacksmith forging brass rods at his charcoal forge was, in essence, minting currency. Calabash gourds of palm oil displayed at the village market circulated within ordinary exchange. A council of elders settling trade disputes under a great tree served as both court and clearinghouse. Intricate beadwork on ceremonial cloth carried value that existed beyond any marketplace transaction. A farmer inspecting his yam harvest in an earthen storage pit was assessing his standing in the Tiv community. Trading live chickens for hand-woven cloth at the village crossroads, first sphere exchange in daily motion. Night gatherings in the compound, stories told by firelight, reinforced the social bonds that made exchange possible. A brass armband shaped by the village smith held value that no quantity of yams could ever match. Children carrying water in calabash gourds learned early that labor was everyone's contribution. An elder explaining exchange spheres to seated young men was teaching an economics more subtle than anything Europe would develop until the 20th century. A potter decorating clay vessels with geometric patterns created objects that were both art and trade goods. A woman preparing palm wine in a dim interior produced the social lubricant of commerce. On market day, crowds gathered at the village crossroads, the economy in full, vibrant motion. Cowrie shells strung on natural fiber cord, countable, portable, universally accepted. Hunters dividing game among families at dusk followed unwritten rules about fair distribution, older than any law. A woman weaving cloth on a traditional horizontal loom produced one of the most valued exchange goods. Dried herbs, clay pots, and bone tools on a compound wall, the inventory of pre-colonial daily life. An elder woman instructing girls in basket weaving transmitted craft and economic knowledge together. Ground turmeric and dried spices on a woven market mat, small goods that oiled the wheels of exchange. A fisherman bartering his fresh catch at the riverside market traded protein for carbohydrates, first sphere exchange. The ceremonial exchange of brass rods between families sealed alliances stronger than any written contract. Rain drove villagers under thatch overhangs, but commerce paused only briefly. A carved wooden ceremonial spoon with geometric handle held cultural meaning no market price could capture. A market vendor arranging dried fish on a woven mat in morning light prepared for another day of trade. As evening fell in the Tiv compound, oil lamps flickered to life, an economy functioning perfectly without a single coin, a single banknote, or a single written contract. An elder woman sorting dried medicinal leaves into calabash bowls held knowledge more valuable than any commodity. A man carrying a towering load of yams along a forest path moved wealth on his shoulders, literally. The tight geometric weave of a basket revealed the skill embedded in everyday objects. As twilight settled over the compound, the economy rested until tomorrow. Thousands of miles away, and centuries earlier, another system of money without coins had taken shape in the Pacific. We crossed the world once more, to the western Pacific, to the island of Yap in Micronesia. Centuries before European navigators charted these waters, massive stone discs tracked ownership through shared memory, even when the stones never moved. Long before any Western concept of banking, on this remote island chain, money took a form unlike anything else on Earth. Giant stone discs called rai, some 12 feet across, weighing thousands of pounds. This was money. These stones were quarried on Palau, hundreds of miles across open ocean, and transported by outrigger canoe. A rai stone's value wasn't just its size, it was the story. How many men had risked death bringing it home? Up close, a rai stone's surface tells its age, lichen-filling grooves carved generations ago. A village chief gesturing at a massive rai during an ownership ceremony transferred wealth without moving a stone. Men hauling a smaller rai on log rollers along a coral path, brute labor creating monetary value. Coconut fiber lashings binding outrigger hulls held together the technology of long-distance stone transport. Women weaving hibiscus fiber into cloth produced the everyday currency that rye stones were too large to serve. Fishermen on outrigger canoes at dawn harvested the sea, the island's most reliable daily wealth. Polished shell ornaments on pandanus mats represented portable value for smaller everyday transactions. An elder recounting a rye stone's history to gathered villagers at dusk kept the oral ledger alive. A stone platform holding several rye of different sizes, a village bank open to the sky. A canoe builder carving a hull from breadfruit wood crafted the vessel that made stone money possible. Through the central hole of a rye stone, the tropical world it anchored comes into view. On Yap, money was landscape. Night gatherings by firelight were where ownership was declared, witnessed, and committed to collective memory. Men diving for shells in the shallow lagoon harvested a currency older than the great stone discs themselves. Taro root pulled from muddy garden beds fed the quarry workers who carved rye and the sailors who transported them. Women preparing betel nut offerings in the meeting house maintained the rituals that governed exchange. Storm clouds gathering over the lagoon threatened the canoes that connected the island to the wider Pacific. A carved breadfruit wood bowl with geometric patterns, beauty and utility were inseparable. Inside the chief's meeting house, woven mats and carved posts marked the space where value was negotiated. Young men racing outrigger canoes across the lagoon competed for status, another form of wealth. A polished basalt adze bound to wood with coconut fiber, the tool that carved currency from raw limestone. Women sorting the morning's fish catch on the beach divided the ocean's bounty for the whole village. Rye stones lining a village path displayed wealth in plain sight, a system remarkably similar to what we now call a distributed ledger. The blockchain, it turns out, is an ancient idea. A navigator reading stars from an outrigger at night guided the canoes that carried stone money across hundreds of miles of open ocean. Pandanus leaves woven into mats created the floors and furnishings of daily economic life. A man climbing a tall coconut palm harvested the tree that provided food, fiber, oil, and building material. A village feast spread on banana leaves celebrated the exchanges and alliances that held Yapes society together. Tool marks on quarry rock in distant Palau recorded the labor of carving a rye, human effort embedded permanently in stone. An elder teaching navigation with a stick chart passed on the knowledge that made long-distance trade possible. An outrigger loaded with trade goods departing at dawn connected the island to a network of Pacific economies. Ancient coral paths worn smooth by generations led between the rye stones, roads running between riches. Women making turmeric paste in stone mortars processed one of the Pacific's most valued trade goods. A rye stone silhouetted against the sunset over the lagoon, money as permanent and monumental as the landscape. Traditional tattoo patterns on weathered skin told stories of rank and achievement, identity as currency. Men repairing thatch on a meeting house roof maintained the space where economic decisions were made. Night fishing with bamboo torches on the reef edge, orange light on dark water, an ancient harvest. A hand-knotted coconut fiber fishing net, technology woven from the same material that lashed canoes and bound an economy. Dawn mist rising from a mangrove channel near the village, another day in an economy older than written history. A dispute settlement ceremony near a large rye stone. The elders arbitrated, the stone bore witness. Small shell money discs strung on fiber cord. the answer to pocket change for everyday transactions. A youth learning stone carving from a master chipped basalt with harder stone, rehearsing the skill that created currency. Women processing coconut meat under a thatched shelter, daily labor sustaining daily life. Tropical rain falling on the palm thatch village. Even the weather could not wash away a rye stone's value. Worn coral stepping stones along ancient paths, every surface shaped by centuries of exchange. An elder's weathered face in warm firelight telling oral history. Memory was the ledger. Story was the proof. This system worked for centuries, but across the ancient world, a different solution was emerging. We now widen the lens across the ancient world from roughly 3000 BCE to 600 BCE as civilizations grew and trade routes multiplied. Widely desired commodities became humanity's first portable money. Something was shifting across every continent during the Bronze and Iron Ages. As societies outgrew their villages, trust between strangers became harder to scale. Cowrie shells emerged as currency across Africa and Asia, portable, durable, countable, and almost impossible to forge. Cattle served as currency across the pastoral world, walking banks that bred their own interest. A trader's worn leather cloth covered with cowrie shells, wealth you could carry in a pouch. Nomadic herders counting cattle at a desert watering hole conducted a census of their wealth. Salt caravans crossing desert landscapes carried money you could literally taste. A salt bar cut with a stone tool, each piece a unit of currency, each crystal a fraction of value. A trader weighing grain on a primitive stone balance beam sought fairness through measurement. In a storehouse, copper ingots gleamed by oil lamp, the raw material of tools, weapons, and trade. Obsidian blades arranged for trade on animal hide, volcanic glass so sharp it could cut, so rare it could purchase. Along trade routes, bolts of woven cloth passed between strangers who shared no language but understood value. Amber beads on a leather cord glowed golden in sidelight, beauty as portable wealth. A fisherman trading dried fish for flint tools at a river crossing exchanged protein for technology. The surface of a compressed tea brick bore a stamped pattern, money you could brew and drink. In China around 1000 BCE, trade demanded something everyone valued. Kola nuts weighed on woven mats in a market, stimulant, gift, and currency all at once. An iron hoe blade laid on earth served as both agricultural tool and medium of exchange across ancient Africa. Coastal traders sorting cowrie shells by size on a beach graded money by nature's own standards. Copper rings stacked on a merchant's arm, wearable wealth, portable and divisible. A pastoral hillside at golden hour, sheep representing wealth that could walk to its next owner. Barley grains measured into a small clay cup established one of humanity's earliest standard units of value. River traders on a reed boat carried bundles of goods between communities that would never meet face to face. Woven textiles folded as trade currency, value measured in thread count and craftsmanship. In a misty mountain village, jade pieces displayed on stone held both spiritual and commercial power. Tin ingots stacked in a trader's hut, raw metal destined for the bronze alloys that built civilizations. Dawn at a market, traders setting out goods on mats invented retail without knowing it. Polished stone beads arranged for trade, portable wealth, beautiful enough to desire, small enough to carry. A spice merchant measuring cinnamon bark on a balance traded in flavors worth more than their weight. Cacao beans in a carved wooden bowl. In the Americas, centuries before European contact, chocolate was literally money. A fishing community with nets drying and cowrie shells in baskets, where food and currency came from the same ocean. Whale teeth carved and polished served as trade valuables, scarcity harvested from the deep. A goat herd silhouetted against the last light. Pastoral wealth breathed, multiplied, and walked. Feather money from Pacific Islands, iridescent, fragile, and astonishingly valuable. Two groups exchanging goods at a river crossing. Where cultures met, commodity money spoke for both sides. Beeswax blocks stored value in golden waxy form, preserved by nature, prized by traders. Dawn at a market somewhere around 700 BCE. The first traders setting out goods as light broke over a world on the cusp of its greatest monetary revolution. Clay tablet, cowrie shells, copper ingot, tally stick, arranged together. For 10,000 years these were the tools of trust, but they were about to be surpassed by something smaller, harder, and infinitely more powerful. From memory to ledgers, from stones to shells, for 10 millennia, humanity asked the same question: how do we make promises that last? Next, around 630 BCE in the Golden Hills of Lydia, a king will stamp a lion onto metal and invent the coin. Episode 2, The Material Promise.